Dark money exposes corrupt US politicians and
This
businesses.
issue go from being dark money to really out in the open, public, flaunted in front of the president's face money. And I'm not sure. I mean, it's transparent from that perspective, but one has to wonder where this goes from here. If something that for years was invested, there was investments made to hide all of this corruption, to see it out in the public, how is that going to sit with voters ultimately, and what impact will that have?
Deanna, you're so right. Dark money is now like daylight money.
Yeah.
We're looking at it all over the place. It's interesting. The voters in Wisconsin recently turned against the amount of spending that Elon Musk tried to do in order to buy a Supreme Court seat that he wanted to influence there. I don't think that it plays well with the public. And the history of America is of waves of corruption and then reform. And I'd say we're overdue for the reform. The public's just got to care, and then there's reform.
The idea that somebody can, toss a bunch of money to somebody under the table and get an unfair advantage. And when that unfair advantage basically results in legislation that undermines our health care, our environment, and essentially equal justice under the law, people start to get really upset. So what we need to focus on, and the reason, I joined forces with Jane to try to tell this story, was to kind of deal with the details, but also make it explicit that what's happening here is something very basic, which is legalized bribery. It's got to stop.
And these are tactics that you note, Jane, both Republicans and Democrats have now undertaken. But perhaps it was, and we learn more of this in The Wicked, the second film, that the journey to get here, decades in the making, was initially picked up on by conservatives who realized that they had a friend, a powerful friend, in big business. Can you go more into that aspect?
Yeah, I mean, basically the backstory to this was that people who felt that they wanted to have more power in the democracy and they felt locked out, religious extremists, anti-abortion activists, and the sort of more extreme end of the business world that wanted to end all kinds of regulations, they formed a pact. They needed each other because there weren't enough votes behind what big business wanted to do, but and the anti-abortion activists and the religious activists, they needed money. They had the votes, not the money. Business had the money, not the votes. So they pretty much formed an alliance which worked step by step by step. They were very methodical and really quite smart, I have to say. Very strategic in how they basically undid all kinds of campaign finance laws that had been put in place, particularly after the Watergate scandal, to control corruption in America. And they took them apart and they brought one case after the next. And they won with Citizens United. And we are now, these many years later, seeing the results of what happens when you knock down all the reforms that were meant to control corruption in American politics. And you're right, both parties play this game because they both have to.